Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to hope that the next Battlefield game won't be a disaster at launch.
Oh, that is some risky hoping. That's you're betting against the house on that one, Bruce. Damn. Just to remind me and everybody else, how much did you spend on Battlefield 2042?
What was it? It was the Ultimate Edition, I'm sure. I'm sure I bought the biggest one. It was like, what, 110? Something like that, 120? I don't even know. Lawrence, I will be fair and say I had a blast playing it, but it was not what it should have been at launch.
Yeah, it eventually got there, which is kind of the story with every Battlefield game. So in a way, it's just like coming home again. Well, Bruce, it's time to start the clock over. That cycle of hope and grief begins anew because we finally got some news about the next Battlefield game, whatever it'll be called. Can this one turn around the struggling franchise for DICE and Electronic Arts?
Boy, I really don't have a choice. In an interview with IGN, Vince Zampella, who is head of developer Respawn Entertainment and also the group GM for EA Studios organization, showed off some concept art and gave some details on the upcoming game.
Yeah, we don't have a ton that's super concrete, but the biggest one is the setting, which kind of shifts around for Battlefield. This one's modern day. There you go. As opposed to the near future of 2042 or 2142 a million years ago, or World Wars 1 and 2, which we've seen in recent Battlefield games.
EA was vague about the concept art, even declining to name the city it featured, but the art did show off what looked like ship-to-ship combat, along with helicopters and nearby wildfires, which is Battlefield. That's what it is.
Yeah, boats. Boats are back.
Yeah.
Remember that stuff? Taken off of carriers and shit? In talking to IGN, Zampella emphasized that this game would return to Battlefield's roots, which is, to me, it's waiting for a helicopter to spawn for 5 minutes, only to have somebody jump into it and crash it immediately. So hopefully that comes back. Great. He said, quote, "If you look back to the peak or the pinnacle of Battlefield, it's the Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 era where everything was modern. And I think we have to get back to the core of what Battlefield is and do that amazingly well."
Nothing says our franchise is in trouble quite like promising everyone you're going back to the thing that was the most popular, right, Vince?
You didn't even mention Battlefield 2. That was modern. Well, whatever. We got more notes from the interview to poke through, plus a recap of Battlefield's rocky history, right after a quick word from today's sponsor, HelloFresh. Today's episode of Inside Games is sponsored by HelloFresh, which can reduce your stress and increase your health at the same time. How can they do both? With options. You can only have so much, chicken breast and Greek yogurt before it starts wearing off. HelloFresh has more options to support your wellness journey than ever before. Dig into their biggest menu yet with over 50 dinner options and even more market items that suit any healthy lifestyle. Plus, start your day right this school year with free breakfast for life. Get one free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active. Give HelloFresh a try and choose from over 30 calorie smart and protein smart recipes each week. That's typically what I do. I just scroll through all the calorie smart ones and pick the ones that sound good. Packed with fresh ingredients, everything arrives pre-portioned and right at your doorstep for less hassle, less stress, and more Thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring today's video. Go to our link in the description and use our code INSIDESEP10 to receive 10 free meals plus free breakfast for life. That's one free breakfast item per box while your subscription is active if you're in the United States. The link and code are valid in all countries and the respective local discount will apply. Thank you very much, HelloFresh.
Thanks again, HelloFresh. All right, here's what else we know from that interview with Vince Zampella. The new game will feature a return to 64-player maps, no more 128. They'll also be going back to classes and dumping the widely hated specialists. That's true. Everybody hated those stupid voice lines.
Let's make some trouble.
There's no release date or official title yet on the new Battlefield, but it went into full production earlier this year. Plans to have a community program sometime in 2025.
Oh man, I didn't remember how wacky the specialists were at launch until you said that.
So stupid, my gosh.
They toned it back immediately though, didn't they?
I don't know about immediately. Maybe not fast enough.
No?
Yeah.
Okay, it must have taken a while. Later on in the interview, Zampella told IGN that they're playtesting the game every week and plan to launch a community program next year. Could be a closed beta, I guess, but the wording is a little unclear, probably because they don't know the details themselves yet.
Yeah, it's true. The game is reportedly being developed by 4 separate studios: DICE, Motive, Ripple Effect, and Criterion.
EA CEO Andrew Wilson claims it's one of the, quote, most ambitious projects in EA's history.
I want to shake my fist at Andrew Wilson every single day. I feel like he's the one responsible, regardless. They'll definitely need help after the mess that was Battlefield 2042 3 years ago. Critics were lukewarm about it at best, and it launched in such a buggy state that it was unplayable for some reviewers. And even months later, it really still had not recovered. It took like at least a year.
Yeah, we later saw reports that EA was super disappointed with the game's performance.
Vince Zampella, who was put in charge of the franchise by EA in December 2021, told IGN that Battlefield 2042 wasn't a failure of a game, but admitted that some features like specialists weren't popular.
As for the new game, he clearly wants to improve on 2042's disastrous launch, saying, "We want it to be good out of the gate." What a noble aspiration.
Players over on the Battlefield subreddit were cautious about the announcement. Lots of people seem to be taking a wait-and-see approach, which makes sense, having been burned by Battlefield hype before. Not just in 2042, but almost every other Battlefield.
Yeah, for the last 2 decades at this point. As user Emergionics wrote, 2042 sounded amazing pre-release. I'm not convinced until I see raw gameplay.
Still, though, others were stoked about specialists being gone and the apparent return of ship-to-ship combat.
Wisely, a lot of people were cautioning each other against putting down any money in advance on this game, which I think we would do the same.
Oh, yes.
Maybe wait and see.
User Pyramids in Space summed it up this way: don't pre-order. We heard this bullshit before.
We sure have. Boy, howdy. While Battlefield 2042's crappy launch suffered rounds of internet mockery, I don't know, from our perspective, feel free to dispute this, Bruce, but it wasn't actually that much worse than a typical Battlefield launch, but that's not saying a whole lot.
It really wasn't. We have the advantage of time, and I still think Battlefield 4 had one of the worst launches I've ever seen of any video game. And people don't seem to remember that one. So 2042's launch was in some cases a little better than other Battlefields. We are not trying to say that 2042 was fine, by the way, just that Battlefield games have traditionally launched in extraordinarily terrible shape.
Yeah, you mentioned 4. Gosh. Yeah, I remember 3 crashed a lot, which sucked because it was fun. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, terrible. Talk about, Battlefront. You just put in the script too. Battlefront 2, what a disaster of a launch. Like, it's just bad every single time.
What's weird is it feels like Battlefront 2 was a disaster in a different way.
It was, yeah.
The game actually ran. Like, it wasn't technically busted, but the monetization and like the star cards and all that crap was such a nightmare. They were trying to extend their like FIFA Ultimate Team kind of monetization to Star Wars because EA paid out the ass for the license. So that was one of those weird games where it was actually kind of finished when it launched, but what it was terrible. Meanwhile, most of the Battlefield games have cool ideas or interesting settings, but they just don't work.
And while the internet is chock full of dudes like us telling you video games suck, Battlefield is actually weirdly a special case.
Even Electronic Arts themselves acknowledge that Battlefield games traditionally launch in really rough shape, and that there's kind of a trend here where after years of patches, DICE is responsible for dragging the games and their audiences back to tolerable status.
Yeah, I feel like this is kind of unheard of that we got to hear them acknowledge this. In a February 2022 quarterly financial call, EA CEO Andrew Wilson, check my fist at him, stated that DICE is the studio that's been able to do this a number of times now and really go back and rebuild at the core and re-engage the community, as long as we do that in conjunction with a committee. That's what the studio was so great at doing. This is crazy to me that they're like, we usually launch it broken and then it takes a few years to come back, so don't worry.
If the market's saying that they're okay with it and they eventually forget, yeah, but I don't know. People don't forget as easily as they used to these days, I think. So hopefully DICE won't be put in that position again. I think that's what we're all hoping for. Time will tell. But yeah, we can hope.
Speaking of time, we'd normally be due for another Battlefield right about now, actually. For the last decade, Battlefield games have launched about every 3 years, often less. That's a rapid pace by AAA standards, which is also why the games have such rickety launches.
Yeah, probably. It was kind of nice getting a new Battlefield pretty frequently, but also they didn't work. So yeah, with Battlefield 2042 launching in 2021, and the fact that the next Battlefield hasn't technically even been announced yet, it's obvious that this game's being given a little more time in the oven, which is, again, a hopeful sign. But, Bruce, Battlefield's like your favorite franchise, right? Out of everything?
It is absolutely my favorite game franchise and has been for 20 years. So I wanted to hear, I have a laundry list of things that they need to do, Lawrence. So I wanted to hear your reactions first, because I was curious to see, because just as a passersby, because I know you like Battlefield, but you haven't been dedicated to the franchise. I promise you, I'm so dedicated to this franchise and DICE, and I have been for so long. So I want to hear your reactions first.
I guess it didn't occur to me that 2042 wasn't a modern Battlefield, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're right.
I guess it's near future, and they have wingsuits and grappling hooks and things that like people now probably don't have. So I guess there's that. But to me, aesthetically and gameplay wise, it had like modern guns, modern aircraft. Didn't have boats, but it was okay. It was closer to the kind of Battlefield that I was waiting for, which was honestly just a successor to Battlefield 4. So it seems like that's exactly what they're going for right now. But part of me also thinks like this is the ripcord they pull when they have to like turn things around. I remember the same thing happened in Call of Duty. They were trying a bunch of different ideas, and then people missed the good old stuff, so they did Modern Warfare again, and that's the game that kind of like pushed them back up into the 30 million sales territory. So I'm into it. They've got my attention. Weirdly, I think for the multiplayer, it'll probably be just like, extra national forces fighting each other. I wonder how they're going to tiptoe around a campaign. Politically, shit is more fucked than ever. So you got to... I don't know how you write any kind of story for a campaign for a modern military shooter that doesn't incidentally become a problem 2 years down the road. So I'm kind of fascinated by that. I've actually always liked Battlefield campaigns. They're like weirdly bombastic and sometimes pretty fun. So I'm looking forward to whatever they put together. And technically, Battlefield games are always really aggressive too. So I'm excited to see what the wizards at DICE can do with... Like Frostbite seems a little easier to work with these days, so I'm excited to see what they do with it.
Man, Frostbite is just one of their many problems that they've always had with Battlefield in the last few years, especially. Okay, so if I was speaking directly to Vince Zampella, here's what I would say. Number one, it's good to hear him say modern setting, because the rumors have sort of been, and I've been saying for a long time, they need to go back to Bad Company. Bad Company 2 was this well-loved franchise that it wasn't the highest sales in terms of Battlefield, but everybody loved Bad Company 2. And I feel like if they are doing a Bad Company 3, then they can capitalize on that goodwill and be like, hey, another important part of this Bad Company thing is that they need a campaign, like Lawrence said. They didn't launch with a campaign with 2042, and they asked for $70. And I remember being like, this is a terrible idea, because if the multiplayer doesn't work and they're asking $70 for a game that doesn't have a campaign, what the hell is going on? And that's what happened. All of those things happened for 2042, and it was really, really bad. So it needs to be Bad Company 2, needs to have a really good campaign, 6-hour campaign out of the gate. That'll be fun. It also needs, Lawrence, I know it's a ridiculous term, but we need it. Levolution. It needs Levolution. Levolution was sick. Like, people made fun of it in Battlefield 4, and then when you played it in the maps, it was rad. So, like, watching skyscrapers come down and watching the weather come through and tear down buildings and stuff, we need more destruction in general, and Levolution is the way. And then, of course, Vince also said it needs to launch well. So, one interesting launch that I saw, I think it was last year, was Diablo 4. I don't know if you remember the Diablo 4 open beta they did, but it was free. And they actually let everybody come in and play Diablo 4 for a weekend or two. And they did stress tests on Diablo 4 before the official launch. And then when they officially launched Diablo 4, there were little to no server problems, which I was surprised, and I couldn't believe that Blizzard pulled it off. That's what Battlefield needs to do. They need to make sure that this doesn't happen. Like 2042 had like server issues and ping issues. It wasn't capacity issues. It was like that people they weren't hitting shots. There's bad hit reg. You were watching things like float across the sky and all the normal Battlefield glitches that we get. So maybe do a couple open beta weekends that are free that try it out. And on that note, it needs a free to play mode, just like Warzone. Call of Duty launched like you talked about when we went back to Modern Warfare. Modern Warfare was a really great campaign. It was a good multiplayer, but Warzone is what shot that thing to the stratosphere. A few months later, they launched Warzone. It was a free-to-play mode, and that became its own thing. So I've been begging Battlefield to launch with a free-to-play mode for years and years and years. I don't know what it's going to be. They tried that extraction mode, Hazard Zone, which didn't work at launch, and also you had to pay for it. Like, what are they doing? Same with Firestorm, their Battle Royale years ago. They included it in the pay version. They didn't make it free to play. I was like, what are they doing? So to me, they need a free-to-play mode. Maybe make another extraction mode with Battlefield that's free-to-play. I don't know. Do something free for people that's they get a little taste, and then they can go and buy the game if they want. Or make it a free-to-play with a bunch of cosmetics that you pay for and a bunch of other. I don't mind microtransactions on a free-to-play mode at all. It doesn't bother me. So give that a shot. That's what I would say to Vince if he were listening right now.
Yeah, it's bizarre. You mentioned free-to-play. I assumed that's what Portal was headed towards.
Yeah.
A free-to-play mode where they sort of rotate out the maps or the guns you have access to. Just a sort of goof mode that gives you a taste of what the full Battlefield suite is like. And yeah, they didn't do that. I don't know where Portal went. I guess are they even still operating it?
Yeah, they are.
Okay, that's cool, I guess. Yeah, a lot of good ideas, Bruce. I do think getting it in people's hands early and letting them play it is paramount, but that requires the game being done. So I think there's a reason it didn't happen with previous Battlefield games, but I don't think they're allowed to play by those rules anymore. I don't think people will tolerate that stuff. Dogpiling on games on the internet is too much fun these days. So, for better or worse, I think internet firestorms have done their job. It's kind of interesting, the trade-off, because like we said in the story, normally we'd have a Battlefield game right now. It wouldn't launch, but it would be there. So maybe in a few months you'd be able to play it. But now we have to wait maybe another year, 2 years, 3 years to get a finished Battlefield. Interesting trade-off, I guess. But I think most people would agree it's worth the wait for a game that actually works when you pay money for it.
It's true. I would agree that trade-off is worth it. But Lawrence, I don't know that they can ever launch a Battlefield that works. I will be shocked if this thing works out of the gate and there are no server issues. I will be shocked because that has never been the case with the Battlefield before. So if Vince Zampella could do it, hey, more power to him.
To his credit, he didn't really promise any new PC snapping features. They're going back to 64-player maps, modern setting. Who knows about Levolution? That might be. I do expect some kind of technological marketing bullet for this, pun partially intended. Because most Battlefield games have that. There's some whiz-bang feature or some change to their class or cover system. I'm really excited to hear what that is, and I do hope it's to the scale of buildings falling down on players and stuff like that. So if magical instability is going to come from anywhere, it's probably that, but we haven't heard what that is yet. So maybe this is a pretty constrained, back to basics kind of Battlefield. Maybe they know the design, they're not trying anything radically new. Maybe it will work. But that also means we may not see anything super exciting. Who knows?
Hey, we want to thank a lot of our Inside Games patrons that support our Patreon every month. They stick their neck out for us even more than Battlefield Draft Man from, was it Battlefield 3? Was it 3?
I think it was 3,
man,
yeah.
I love Draft Man. John Warren Gallardi, Blunt Smoking, Anus Destroyer, Old Baby Leg, and Ian McGee.
That's right. No matter where you die on the map, no matter how inconvenient it is, these patrons will sprint right up to you and revive you before doing anything else. Before kneeling on your corpse and shooting and getting shot 5 minutes later. God, that's my favorite. Cash Putnam, Just a Chair, UESC Battleroid, and J Embers87. Thanks for the support and the revives.